G'day, citizens. Welcome to the Inforunners. I'm Execute, joined today by the Astro Pub and old man Hurston himself, Algrid. How you guys doing?
They're
We're
good.
good. You can tell we're doing good. We're finally dressed and looking
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah, I put the shit
Yes,
dressed at the
unlike-
top.
I'm still getting over my cough as from the last recording as well. But
Well, you
I'm
can-
doing fighter.
Joining me and Algrid, we've got him as well. It's just that time of year, I
Yeah.
think.
Allergies and other stuff get us, and
Mhm. Allergies as well
Please get
here.
you.
So
So we thought we'd take the time today to do a yearly recap and also look forward to the year ahead and basically use one to reflect and look at the other, I think is probably the way I would kind of look at it, and we'll go from there. So they called it the year of stability. We had 10 patches this year. And just there was a lot of different things that they kind of put out this year, and I guess we'll kind of brief overview. I think they kind of hit most of their goals, and I guess like yeah, I don't know what else to kind of add to that without kind of.
well, they talked about stability, but they also talked about content.
Yes,
This was also a year of content. And I always like to point out that the context of stability was that at the beginning of the year, it was really bad. 4.0 was really bad. Yes, we had server meshing, but problems with servers were abound, either crashing and locking people out. There was lots of like little problems. Nothing that was like impossible to overcome, or that people didn't eventually come up with workarounds for that even still work today.
Yeah.
But in general, yeah, it wasn't always.
it wasn't always smooth.
It's a common thing as well, and it probably will happen again with the NDB patch because of the nature of how they come out. But yeah, it's a common thing that the last patch of the year leaves the game in a little bit of an off state, but it rapidly improved. I think we're pretty.
Oh yeah, I think the way I would say is that in terms of stability, under CIG's own conditions of what they were talking about with stability, I think they did well. The game is a much better position than it was last year, and yeah, we're going to end up with less stable servers this going into the break because they patch always goes, but I think we'll be in a much better position in January, February than we were January, February last year, and even then, last year was January, February was better than the year before that. So,
and not only was this year more stable in terms of the less crashes, but we also again had an increase in the player count. So 600 odd per server now. So that was even still creeping up, and it didn't have an overly negative impact on the gameplay or the crashes and stuff. Yes, there are still bugs. Yes, it still happens, but the recovery from when it does happen is actually a lot better than it used to be.
That doesn't mean it's perfect in any way, shape, or form. It's still got problems, and I think the biggest problem that CIG has, and hopefully in this new year, and actually I don't know if they'll fix about this new year, is that it's not consistent. Like at least with 3.18, everyone was having problems. This year was the year of I was having problems, but Algrid wasn't having problems. But Execute was having problems, but then Algrid and I won't have problems. That kind of thing. Where 1 out of 100 people will get a weird bug that it's hard to find out, but it's so common that it's happening to 1% of the entire community. So it's needs to be solved, and you don't know if it's this or that, and that's basically what this year was mostly about.
I think as a whole, I don't think you can say there's exactly one thing that improved the year. I think it was multiple things combined that did that. Like a lot of people will go, "Oh, it was all the content that made heaps of new people come," and I could also argue, but a part of that was because it was the one engine build the whole year, so it was a lot. It became a lot more stable. There was essentially. There wasn't no bugs, but I think you would agree that the bugs didn't change a lot. Like once you kind of learned the workarounds, they kind of stabilized ironically. And I think just with the content as a whole, one a month was probably too much for them. I do think that the quality dipped in areas. And again, I would hope what they've told us about next year is they're going to reiterate and essentially do that every second month. And I would hope they would do that with other things too. Constantly improve and change how they do things to dial it in, much like how you build a prototype and then a reiterate and then build another one. You do a couple of revisions, getting it closer to perfect.
And there were times when the mission they brought out, because of the bugs in the mate, they ended up extending the length of the time. So it kind of pushed things back. And so it did change the way I think the plan was. I think the plan was definitely just to keep going once a month, but sometimes you ended up with the previous months rolling over just because it had been so buggy at the start. And so, but they really, the mission content really did improve in terms of what you could do and how you could do it, even though
you could see the vision at the
you could see the vision. Even if the missions at times did seem very similar in terms of what you were doing.
I will say, like, you could tell one of the biggest things that was an improvement was CIG learned how to tell stories and built tools to help them tell stories. Because the fight for Pyro, save Stanton, fight for Pyro was just bad. It was buggy, and like all of the storytelling techniques they wanted to do, and that twist was just such a memed thing. That like they knew that they screwed up. In fact, it was such a bad execution that the end of the year, like Hunt the Polaris, the final stand of the Frontier Fighters sort of mission chain with Amelia, that was it felt more less like a grand finale of success and more of we got to drag this across the finish line because we already started it, so we got to finish it somehow. And so they did take some of the things they learned, but it was still the same mission over and over again. It got repetitive. But then you do you look at
that's like a game
B-plot.
The mission team can only work with what they got.
Oh yeah. But the thing is, like, that one was beforehand. Like even that was better than it was before. But the B plot was so much better. It was hands down better with the regen crisis, with Dr. Yorit, and all of the resource rush. Despite the problems with the elevators, it was still hugely popular for people to participate in it.
I gotta admit, the resource rush, I actually didn't use it to do elevators because they always bugged out for me. But doing the hunt, the operatives never bugged out, whereas other people were finding the reverse. So a bit like you were saying earlier, one of us would get one bug and someone else wouldn't get that bug. But it was
even with the mission team, they did a hell of a lifting. Like, you can clearly tell a lot of people were doing stuff in the background because there was no build change all year. You can kind of tell that was the case. Hang on, I'm getting messages. Let me turn this off. So basically, they alliterated though that first mission they did where they had all the data, and you're meant to read all the little boxes and everything and the data pads. They stuffed that off because they knew it didn't work. They learned games don't read, and then they reiterated. But you were right though. Essentially, a lot of the missions were the same because there's not a lot of different gameplays. It did highlight to me a lot how, and I also think that's why the cargo one was very popular because it was different. We hadn't had ever had anything like that in the entire game. But then you could tell they were not going to do another one because of all the bugs with the elevators. So it highlighted the strengths and weaknesses, but it also taught they would have learned a hell of a lot. Like what people like, what people don't like, what worked, what didn't,
The mission one kind of reminded me a bit of Xenofret Star. We used to go to the ships and get the cargo and take it back to the repair of the Javelin. And yet it was also different. But it still had that appeal to people, to the haulers or other people, to the non-PvP people. And I can remember rocking up to Xenofret, and it didn't matter who you were. Everyone was just helping load ships or fight off a fight, and that was really good. But the Save Stanton one, or the mission to get the cargo, but the resource drive, when the lists weren't working, it really did pose a problem. And I did like the idea though of separating. You had your PvP aspect, which was go off and fight the fighters or save the freighter, or you could just do the straight PvE version, which was just form cargo.
Yeah. Combat, non-combat. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was a nice division. It gave you that choice. Whereas Xenothreat kind of, you didn't have a choice. You were in a combat zone. So yeah.
So just overall, I think it was a mixed year when it comes to content, because a lot of the content they released was good. Even the ships they released were good. A lot of the original ships they released, not by that I mean not like variants, were well received. And I don't think this year is this is the first year that I don't think there was any sort of duds. The biggest dud was probably the Missed Fortune.
I think we could safely say there was a lot less than the previous year before it. I think from a ship perspective, though there were a lot of ships last year in 2024, I think that, like, if you look at the Invictus sale, we essentially had a snub and 2 vehicles. That's probably the single worst sale I've ever seen. And there were a lot of duds. There were a lot of ships that just didn't land right. But again, they were training new people. What you were seeing was a maturing of those people as they went into this year with variants. Now, I don't know if they heard feedback. I don't know if it was just maturity, but let's be honest, generally it's a sum of its parts type of situation. I'm sure that I feel bad when I've got to shit on someone's ship. Like, I know they've worked on that thing for like 18 months, but I have to call it like it is. So I will continue to do that if it is bad. But by the same token, I think both of you would agree, we will praise it when it is correct as well. So it's just wanting them to be better, take it as critical, or not critical, constructive feedback. Because that's how I intend it, and I'm pretty sure you gentlemen intend it.
It's not meant to be tearing down. It's meant to be constructive, constructive criticism. Yeah.
I do think you're right, Paul. I think the ships as a whole were better this year. And there was some really good ships that you could tell that there was new blood. Like the Golem.
Yeah.
The Golem was just amazing. I think that was a ship that was made with love, but it was also made with cleverness involved as well. And even when that rolled off into the Ox, it was the same thing. You could tell the person that built that ship knew how the ship had to function. Like it had things on it that they would just be missed off other ships. Like they realized it needed a tractor beam, but then they realized it needed like a little arm so the distance could get out right, so you could actually adjust the boxes and stuff like that. That's the type of thought that we wouldn't see go into ships into a alliteration, right? So just as the the gameplay team or the mission team was essentially alliterating, you've seen the same thing with the ships over time too. So I'm pretty sure John.
Are you saying iterating?
Yeah, iterating. Yeah,
iterating. Yeah.
Sorry, what am I?
Alliterating is a thing. You're saying alliterating. I'm like, I don't think that's what you meant, but yeah, I got it. Yeah, iterating.
Well, I was
before anyone in the comments comment on it. We're all kind of You said alliterating.
Oh, okay.
Which is the sounds rather than.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Bipolar.
You're good.
Yeah, but long story short, yeah, I think like we're seeing like even higher ups, like when I saw Ben Curtis talk about how he wanted the Polaris to be, right? And he went in with this vision, but then he realized and he heard all the feedback about the signs and stuff. And then you go look and what happened, what he did in the Perseus. So that's even someone that had a vision, and you get people, and this is not happening. This is a positive for you. And if you watch this, right, there's a lot of people high up where I worked in game communities. You could never tell them anything. They knew everything. They were the master of their domain. They would never take feedback. They would never take criticism. He has clearly heard the criticism, taken it on board, and he has improved and made those ships better for everyone. And he's probably had to compromise his own vision to do so when it comes to the Polaris. But that just shows a person that can evolve and learn, and that impresses me. I was very impressed with Ben when he talked about that particular issue with the signage in the Polaris. And people that are able to grow like that, especially artistically, it shows that the ships are going to get better and better. And being an art director, that's something I was really positive to see. So yeah, and I hope that is not just a Ben thing. I hope that's an entire CIG thing.
All right, so I think we've talked a little bit about just in general, overall, like kind of gone through the year, not necessarily the fine tooth comb, but kind of the vibes. So why don't we talk a little bit about like, was this year a success or not? From the perspective of, say, fans. Was this a successful year for Star Citizen, for CIG?
I think the only thing I don't really, well, it might be not the only thing, but one of the things I didn't like was how it's called the year of stability, because really it was the year of no patch. And what, I shouldn't say no patch, no engine update, right? So that's how they made it stable. They just didn't give us any drastic, massive game-breaking engine build. And now we're getting that at the end of the year with engineering. You can see that we're going to have all this cascading effects afterwards. So yeah.
And yet the patch that we're getting was the logical next patch to do with the engineering patch. And so they just want it. So the reason it's delayed or reason it's so late is they were actually working to make sure it's as stable as they can make it. So does that counter that? I think that kind of, I kind of feel the fact that they delayed it because to try and make it as stable as possible leans into that. We want it to be the year of stability.
Well,
if it meant we didn't get an engine update.
We were hearing back as early as July about them, it's coming, and then it's coming in August, then it's coming in September, then it's coming in October, and it's now December. And we've kind of just seen it kind of, I think it was late or early November where they started to do the Evocati testing for it. So it was severely delayed. So they obviously had a lot of internal issues getting it off the ground. And I know from my time in Evocati, it has drastically improved. So yeah.
But I think like had they brought it in earlier, stability wouldn't have been there. Whereas by trying to make it as stable as possible, yes, it did mean we didn't get a patch, but it also meant they could hold to that. We want this game to be as stable as platform as possible. And I think they succeeded in that goal.
Yeah, well, they know their audience too. Like you heard Thorsten talk about it. Like he's like, "Oh, we've cut back all these other features because we want you guys to be able to take it in." Because my first thought when I sort of thought people are going to hate this, right? Or they're not going to hate it, but they're going to complain like they complained about master modes, and that's exactly what happened.
Your direct comment to me when it first came out is you said, "We're not ready for it.
Yeah.
No one's ready for it."
And I meant that as in the entire audience, so to speak, or backers community. Yeah. Because I know the way they reacted to master modes and the flight changes and stuff like that. And I think even now in its most basic form, it probably affects everyone.
Oh yeah.
But it probably still affects PvP as probably more than anyone else. Because it now
it's 100%.
It's the other side of that combat coin, isn't it? It's the defense coin, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I know that a lot of PvPers are not happy with it. So, and it's there's a lot of problems with it, but like, I think that's a good example of the problem. The benefit of the year of content, the year of stability, was that they could just focus on the game as it is with 4.0, how they released it at the beginning of the year, and they can just focus on making it the best experience possible with more stuff to do. The problem is you're building a community that is now even introducing new people to the game who are used to this and think this is not going to change. And then when you introduce change, people don't like change. They bought the game for X, and now you're changing X, so fuck you, kind of thing. And that's one of the reasons why I've been a big supporter of move fast and break things for Star Citizens. Like I'd much rather have them have all the features in and then fix the problems with it, but that doesn't sell copies.
What you've just described there, I can hear Agrid when he said that, because I can't remember wrong here, Agrid. But me and Agrid always look at what the game was planned to be and what they're aiming for at the end, not what it is right now. So if you're going to talk about how, say, X person brought a Scorpius because that's how it was when it was sold, well, it was never going to stay the same way because they'd always had this plan to move to this other model. Is that what you were going to say, Agrid? Because that's what I instantly thought as soon as he said it.
It was pretty much what I was going to say, but that's not what the game's going to be.
No.
And the other thing is, with that stability, we do get a lot more people coming in. we do get people coming in and wanting to play that way and getting stuck in their ways. But it's also, look at any MMO, any MMO you've ever played. A patch comes in, your class has been, you got to redo your class because it's been modified. So you got to redo your magic trees or your building trees or your combat trees or whatever it is. Every single, EverQuest, Daok, WoW, you name them. Every one of them does it. A new patch comes out, you've got to redo your character. I lost count of a number of times on Lotro that I had to redo my legendary weapons or my first aid weapons.
You could even take that as a mini micro analogy with engineering now too, right? Look at the functionality of engineering and what it's capable of, not how balanced it is. And I think that's the other thing with PvP is they're always worried about this balance, and that's always going to fluctuate. And as I said, I've said a few times, just numbers that you can change. As long as everything's functional, who cares if a ship blows up in 5 seconds? Because you can change a few numbers and then it takes 5 minutes to blow it up, right? So it's just look at the functionality, try and understand the functionality. Don't worry about the balance, right? Because the balance can
get the code.
That's it. Yeah. Just look how it works,
right, and then balance it afterwards.
So they've just put it in because everything's functional now. Now they're going to balance it. And that's what they're scrambling to do now in these last couple of weeks before it comes out. Because if it comes out and it's not balanced over the break, they're going to hear nothing but complaints. So like, oh, my Perseus died in 3 shots. Fire. Yeah, basically.
No, I think they're just, the time is against them in that factor.
Yep, agreed.
So,
well,
I
did talk about how they can do it really quickly though, and get a baseline, and that's essentially just split them into sizes, and essentially try to get at least 4 baselines, so small, medium, large, and capital, and then probably try to split them into at least 3 groups in each of those, almost like light, medium, heavy, capital, light, medium, heavy, large.
What they did with master modes.
Essentially,
so that's exactly what they do.
Essentially, yeah. So because it allows you to get some baselines, and that's at least playable for the time, and it'll be fairly flat in some areas, kind of a bit shitty, but it's better than nothing. And then basically, when you come back around, spread them all out. Like how they've been doing the weapons passes on light fighters, interceptors, mediums, heavies, and all that type of thing. It's that same thing, but then they'd have to go back and do that for mediums, larges, and capitals. So, yeah.
The only thing I'll add to that is that I think that this year was a success. However, it has set the expectation, which is not tenable, and CIG knows that. And so I think we're going to see a bit of a backlash as a result.
When they step back up, how many patches are done? So if they only do like 5 patches instead of 10.
Yeah, I think they'll do 6, but I think they'll do like maximum 6. Basically a patch every 2 weeks, 2 months, I should say. So
it'll depend on the quality, because if the quality and the number of bugs disappear, I don't think they will.
Like if just imagine if you do a resource drive, but the lists work perfectly.
Yeah.
And that mission worked, no bugs anywhere. Yeah, you get it doesn't last. The next one's not for another month or so, but when it comes out, it's the same. People are going to be looking forward to those missions rather than going, oh, here's another.
I'll save that for when we talk about next year, about what like to look forward to next year. I'll just say that there are other problems. Now, why don't we talk about was this successful for CIG?
Well, how do you rate it as successful? We made shit tons of money. Well, actually, let's talk about that too.
Well, I think there are several ways you do it. One is shit tons of money.
We are more than likely going to hit 150 million here on this tracking fund.
Almost certainly.
Just so you guys know, when we're recording this, it was December the 15th in Australia, the December the 14th. So it's the day after the shooting, if you're watching from the future. But yeah,
and it's right now at 149 mil.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think we can safely call that would, as soon as the patch drops, whenever it is, even if there isn't a ship, that would naturally spur some sales that I think you're going to tick over at least $1 million.
And you can just looking at the December sales. There's only 1 year where 1 or 2 years where those December sales are less than what we've got already, but just looking at the green level there. And I can't say it's not increasing anymore.
It's actually the second biggest already. So you're aware.
Yeah.
I'm looking
I don't think so.
I'm looking at the percentages. Look at the percentages.
Yeah, 2019 was 11 mil.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at 9 mil. So like it will probably it'll probably beat that. Are we talking about money or citizens?
Well, let's have a look. So I mean it's gonna increase. There we go. So that is currently
but it's
9 mil.
It's still one of the big
19, 8, 8, 9. So okay, it's equal second then. What's this one back here? That's 11. So it is equal third currently.
Yeah.
Equal third.
But it'll probably break 11 mil. That's honest.
Yeah. And I reckon it's going to go higher. So that's one metric you've got to see. Yes, it's a success. It's significantly higher than any other year you've ever had.
Yeah, I don't think it'll beat next year, or last year, which was 19. But again, if they bring out a new ship, that is entirely plausible. Already being at 9, it'll just have to get another 10. But 160 mil.
They bring out the
even when you look at the even if you look at the new citizens or new account signups, it's the third best new account signup year.
And that's the other one to pay attention to. The new citizens are signing up. So the number of new people joining the game.
So do you think CIG would rank it on money? Like how well you did on money? Or do they think it's, as a developer, I think the marketing would do it like this, right? But I think most devs would just pick it by whatever. So the mission team, was our mission successful? Was our that's how I'd be rating SS on an independent thing.
And the other ways I think they view whether it's success is concurrency. How many people are playing at a time? How many hours were played? So overall, so concurrency, hours played, new accounts, and cash. And I think those 4 factors are 4 ways that CIG determine whether they've had a great year. And I think, from what I understand, all 4 of those are up.
I think all this, even if you look at it from a money point of view, is multiple factors. Like I said earlier, I think it's the stability, it's the content, it's a coming together, it's the maturing of the game, but also you can just naturally look at how every year is essentially being year on year, except for last year, obviously. But you get my point, right? We're growing.
Yeah.
The game's growing. There's more people playing it than ever before. And as a community gets bigger and bigger, obviously it's going to bring more and more money. It's just a natural effect. I don't know how much of that is the natural effect. But it is another way to look at it. The content is just that you look at last year at 116. Is that extra, 32 mil or whatever it is that just the content? Is that just the stability? Is that just the new people?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what factor is that? And that is unquantifiable in my book, to be honest with you.
I think looking at all of the statistics we can see and looking at CIG's goals that they set out at the beginning of the year, I would say this year was a successful year. It wasn't the most successful year they've had, but it is a successful year.
Agreed.
I think generally speaking, from a fan perspective and from a CIG perspective, it's probably the fans and the CIG are probably on the similar wavelength. I think the fans are a little bit more mixed. But the number of people I've seen who are like, oh yeah, I haven't played since 2016, coming back this year has been astounding.
Agreed.
Content creators, players coming back from years of hiatus is massive.
I ran into someone that hadn't played since 2014.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's 11 years.
Hadn't played since Arena Commander. Right.
Yeah, that was how crazy it was. He had like a physical Connie pack. So
and I think that is probably for me the most important factor when it comes to is this year successful? It's like, is it not only getting new attention but bringing back old attention for people who left? And the answer is yes for both. Then yes, it's doing well.
And that seems to be what I hear as well. It's when I look at who's playing, it's old players, new players. It's people playing for longer hours and concurrently. It's so on all the metrics I think of, they're up. And so at that point, I've got to say, well, a success.
Yeah.
Probably another way you could look at it is the percentage increase greater than previous years? And if that's still true, again, you'd have to say a success. If it's less, then you might be able to say, well, it's successful, but not as much growth as you'd have expected or hoped for. But
all right, we should probably move on to next year then. And kind of looking where that kind of left off, I naturally start to think of, things that they've said. And I also think we also have to talk about Squadron. But I also think we need to talk about Star Citizen. And I think that's going to be a multi-factor year approach. They clearly want Star Citizen to be. So let's just set some facts, all right, or things that we think are correct. I'll say some things, and if you don't agree with me, please speak up.
Sure.
So I think Star Citizen has to improve to a level to kind of support Squadron. Would you guys agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think because of that, we're probably going to see a lot of gameplay come in next year. So I'd expect
features. You mean
features or gameplay, whatever, a bunch of different things. Like I think they want base building in. I think mining, salvage, refining. I think they're the 4 big things I think you need, because if you're going to get base building, you have to have a way to feed it, and you have to have a way of the fed stuff to turn into the material that you can then use to base build, right? So I think those 4 things are probably the thing they're going to be aiming for the most. Any gameplay outside that is a mega plus, right? So if you bring in data running, bounty hunting, all those type of things that we know that have been sitting in the wings for 2-3+ years now. And John Crew did say expansive. He probably used the wrong word there if he was trying to hint about the expanse, but I wouldn't rule that out as a ship that we possibly may see next year as well. But realistically, as I talked about, if I was going to get things off the ground, I'd put them into the buildings. Knowing that you've got to have base building ready to kind of go, you would want to, it's quicker and easier to iterate on a building. I've said this to you boys both before. So
yeah,
I think we're going to see a lot of stuff come in through buildings and then expand out into ships.
Yeah, I think, not discounting what you're saying, because I think it's true, but I think the key thing they're going to be aiming for, certainly with Squadron coming out, is stability. They want to build on that level of stability, because if you play Squadron and then you come into Star Citizen and it's crashing all the time, you're going to leave in droves. So they want that stability to draw people in, but they're also going to need that.
I think it'll be a little different
features
than what we've seen other years. I think it'll be packed full of adding stuff in the first 6 months and then polishing the shit out of it in the last 6 months, so it's ready to go.
I could see that
with Squadron at the end of the year. Or that's just where my brain goes. You tell me if you think I'm wrong in that. But again, I get stuff in and then polish it. That's just kind of where my brain goes.
I think CIG is likely going to try to bring as much parity from Star Citizen to Squadron before the release.
Agreed.
Along with stability.
Yep.
So they'll want things like scanning in, because that's in Squadron. They'll want things like the new the actor status system, the new actor status system stuff, the crafting, which isn't in Squadron, but that's another big big hurdle. And I'm hoping this is not what I think CIG is doing. This is me reaching out to CIG and saying, "Dear God, please fix your social systems. It is the year of our Lord 2026, and you still do not have a functional social system in an MMO. This is the time to prepare for it. If you're going to have a huge influx of people from your single player game, this is the year you need to have that done."
The inventory too. The inventory as well.
Inventory.
They did talk about it.
Coming in next year too.
They talked about it, so I agree. The inventory and social, I think that's definitely included. But I was just going to say, I can't see them doing it any other way, though. If you're aiming to have something ready by the end of the year and you've got to be polished, you've got to get it in. It's kind of like you said, you rather it be broken and moving, so you get it in broken and then you just spend more time fixing it. And I think that's the approach they're going to have to take. So realistically, up until this point, it's always been building everything, stuffing it in the end of the year, then spend the first half fixing it. I think it's going to be the other way around, where they've essentially going to be they just started to stuff engineering in. They're going to stuff a lot more in then they're going to fix it all ready to go
Well,
for Squadron.
and even when you look at engineering is not just a small little thing. It's one that covers everything. It's every ship gets impacted by it. Every system gets impacted by it. Combat gets impacted by it. Hauling, you name it, it gets impacted by engineering. And so there's a lot. It's not just one thing. There's a lot of things that are going in there. You know, damage control, repairs, and so I can see there's a lot there. And so getting that in, shoving that in, and then fixing it up if it's broken.
And the other part,
getting it in.
Yeah, the other part I think of is how deep do they go with things. So, like, if you wanted to do refining, an example, through buildings, do you just copy what a station does and put it into your own building? That's tier 0, is it not? It's just taking what we already have and reusing it elsewhere. So it doesn't really need to be that deep. It doesn't really need to be in a ship, right? So you can start to see very quickly the advantages of rapid iteration and essentially doing it very, very quickly. Can you take anything that's like a medical room in a station, and then you put that in a building? You can see it very quickly. You just take everything that's a part of the room system, and you get all those features for free. And then it's just how much other gameplay they've got sitting in the background. Squadron.
I don't think it comes out this year.
2026.
2026, yeah. I don't think it comes out 2026.
Ooh.
I think CIG is going to, I do think CIG is going to try to. But I think when it comes down to it, every game of the size and scale of Squadron that has ever been made, or never been made, that's been made in the last decade, the last decade and a half, has had a delay simply because they get it to a state where they're like, okay, we're a couple months away. Let's take a look at this. Is this up to our standard? And it's like, no, we need a few more months. Because games like this, the scale is so large and there's so many moving parts that some things won't really show themselves until you get towards that final polishing stage. And then you go, fuck, we need to go back and work on that.
So I'll tell you something that I've suspected for a while. A lot of this year was pulling people from Star Citizen over to work on Squadron because they allowed the mission team to essentially carry all of Star Citizen, right? And then there was a few people that worked on engineering and engine updates, but a lot of the stuff like the engine updates, that works on Squadron and it works on Star Citizen, right? So they had a team working on engineering because that's what they focused on. And they had the mission team. Those two teams is all they really need. If you think about it, break it all down, that's all, and the ship team work on both as well, that essentially can push everything forward. So anyone that they could take and move them over to Squadron to boost the shit out of Squadron and QA test, play through, fix bugs, all that type of thing, I think that's what they were doing this year. I think they were putting as many hands on it as they possibly could because I think the delay, when Algren and I went to CitizenCon, we were, I won't say exactly why, but we had been told that it was pretty much coming, right? And then it didn't.
Yeah.
And then it was delayed by 2 years. And I was like, 2 years? That's insane. I think that was the delay you're talking about. And with the legal repercussions of what will happen with the 45 that then increased to 56 million loan that they got, they have to pay that back, and they have to also pay back stuff to the UK government. It has to come out by a certain date, or there are massive fines, like really big ones. And I've heard stuff from internally, and I know Agrid's probably heard a few things as well, that basically have said that it is hell or high water time. I don't know, Agrid, do you want to talk to that at all, or?
More or less, it's get it out.
Yeah, it's get it out, or shit's gonna hit the fan.
My only thought was of the delay is that I'm not talking about like a delay of like, oh yeah, it's not coming out. I'm talking about like
a short one.
It gets delayed till like February or March, from October. I think the internal date is clearly October.
We can agree there'll be at the very least a date this year.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yep.
No matter what, they're going to have a date this year. Whether they hit that date, if it's this year, is But that's the thing, is that like that's the question. That's the cloud that hangs over Star Citizen and CIG, is not only Squadron 42, but Squadron 42's success is so important to the company to get legitimacy in the community, and for the developers to have a CV little roster so that when they leave the company, they can go to another company that isn't going to laugh at them for working on the scam. You know,
I think the 2-year delay was to give themselves more time than they needed. I think that was to literally give them more than they needed. You look at that I know it's the first level, and they probably polished that first level more than any other, right? So they 6 months or whatever.
That prologue level
was pretty damn good. There was 2 little bugs in it that were quite small and easy to fix. If that was the only 2 bugs in the entire thing, and then you go back and then polish every single level, every level you polish is less and less that has to be polished because it's probably used again in another level.
And the crash on that when they were going through that playthrough was the PC itself.
Yeah. That's all the people I talked to at CIG about that. They said, yes, it was the PC. They did not have, they're in the process of testing. Earlier this year, even, they were still in the process of testing, being able to test for every different type of loadout that exists.
We heard that from CIG employees literally the same day. They were telling us that at the convention.
They're in that process of doing that. They were in that process of doing that as of like March, even last year, when I was talking to people who were working on Squadron. They were still doing that, and they did not have that done. They weren't working in dev mode for that, so that's why it crashed.
I basically heard every department was testing their stuff and testing the game. Every department was running through that prologue, and no one had to crash, and it was just that.
It had because it was
on game.
Because it was a new PC. I can't remember what it was, but it was something that hadn't been installed that caused the crash. You know, when you get a new PC and it's like got an outdated version of DirectX or some driver, it was missing some driver that was required, and that's what caused the crash. Is what we were told later. But look, I'm going to be honest with you. I wouldn't rule out a delay. Right? I'm not going to sit here and go, "No, Paul, you are wrong."
Yeah.
Right.
I don't want to be right. I mean, this way, I don't want to be right. This one.
I don't. And I can see that, and I would agree.
Yeah.
But I think, as you're saying, the plan is October. I think they very much want to do the CitizenCon thing. Like we said, when you look at, because I've had a lot of people ask us, 2 or 3 people ask us, haven't they, I read about the live stream about they're worried about Grand Theft Auto, and my reply is always been this: Grand Theft Auto won't come out on PC for about 2.5 years after that. So essentially, it's a console game. Squadron is a PC game, right? And if you've got enough money to buy a PC and a console, you've got enough money to buy both games, right?
That's not the issue, though.
And just let me finish. And if you know you've got to wait a month and a half to get to GTA 6, and a really good game comes out, and you've got a PC, wouldn't you buy that so you can pass the time to get to Grand Theft Auto 6?
100%.
Yeah. Go ahead, though. So what you're going to say.
I've been preaching this for years, literal years now, which is there are 2 examples I use of real life case studies on how you don't and do release games. I love Titanfall. I think Titanfall 2 is one of the best games that has ever been made ever.
And just to reiterate real quick, they even said Titanfall 2 and Half-Life 2 was inspirational for Squadron. So yeah.
So like Titanfall 2 is an amazing game. It's one of the best games. If you haven't played it, it's really cheap to get. Go get it. The reason why most people didn't play it and didn't know about it until years after it was released was because it was released between Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. It was literally released a week after Battlefield 1. And as most people know, hopefully most people are watching, you don't have a spare $200 laying around every month to pay for like 3 of the most important games of the year, which is, $60 for each one back when games cost $60.
EA killed it. They released it a week after their own product. And I'm going to be honest with you, Titanfall 2 is the only one of those 3 games I brought.
Yeah.
And I bought it as it came out. Yeah.
I'm just thinking EA, the wonderful publisher that kept changing the goals when CIG was originally looking for funding.
Here's the thing. The reality is that The reality is that EA was looking at it in a practical way where they saw Call of Duty was releasing a game that was in space, but it's a shooter and it's sci-fi. So they were like, okay, we're going to release a shooter, which is what the Call of Duty fans want, and then we'll release a science fiction game, which the science fiction fans will want, and so then we'll be able to split the market and steal all of their market share. But the reality is that the people who were buying Titanfall were shooter fans, and the people who were buying Battlefield 1 were shooter fans, and the people who were buying Call of Duty were shooter fans.
They don't know their own market.
And because there was nobody talking about Titanfall 2, because all the buzz was about Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty, because that was the social media buzz, it was all the marketing buzz, was all about that. Titanfall 2 disappeared. No one knew about it except for the hardcore
you
fan base.
reckon that the GTA's loud noises could essentially distract from Squadron?
Exactly.
I'm going to be honest.
No, but here, let me add one more thing. Okay.
Mine's real quick, but go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think Squadron is going to be one of those games that come out and over time it's going to build an audience because it's just not going to have the marketing that GTA 6 is going to have. And also GTA 6 has a massive multiplayer component. This is predominantly a solo campaign. So people are going to look at it and go, I can buy this movie-like cinema experience and then move on, right? GTA 6 is the game people are still playing, like they're still playing GTA 5 and it's been like over a decade. So it's a little bit more of a behemoth in a different way. Yeah.
But my point is here's the way you actually release it. So I always screw up the name, Lutian Studios, the guys who did Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh, Larian.
Larian Studios.
Yep.
Larian Studios. Larian Studios releases Baldur's Gate 3. Originally, Baldur's Gate 3 was supposed to release a week after Starfield. And they looked at Starfield, they looked at the buzz around Starfield, and they looked at what they had, and they said, we can do this earlier. So they released it a month earlier because they were still going to be waiting for them to release it on consoles, so they released it a month earlier on PC. And so it was released in August when there was not a lot of games that were being released. So it got a lot of buzz, and it built up a buzz because it had a cult following, the people who were going to buy it no matter what, because people are Baldur's Gate fans through and through, and the people who were Larian Studios fans with the Divinity.
You don't think a month and a half before GTA 6 is enough?
No, I was going to say it is enough.
Oh, okay.
That's my point. Is that Larian managed to get a lot of social media buzz as a result, and then also got a lot of indie news coverage as a result. And so it managed to surge in sales because people were waiting for this other game, and they had that $60 laying around so they could purchase it in the summer before Starfield. Everyone was playing Baldur's Gate 3, and people who weren't playing Baldur's Gate 3 were playing it because they were bored.
I also heard people that were like 3 weeks, 4 weeks after Baldur's Gate had come out, they started to hear the bad reviews and things about Starfield, so they bought that instead.
Exactly. Yeah. So my point being is that CIG releasing this in early October with GTA releasing in late November would be the best solution that CIG could have, because it would allow for more word of mouth spreading. And because CIG has the advantage of not having to pay back a fuck ton of money right away, like other studios have to do in terms of paying back their publishers. They can just, as long as they maintain it and let it go out, they can let it cook for longer. And the longer it goes out, the more word of mouth it has. As long as it reviews well and it releases well, it'll pull a lot more.
And another advantage is, as the money comes in from sales, you can turn that around and do more marketing.
I think they'll still rely on the word of mouth. That's what's done CIG a lot of good in the past. Having that 6 weeks, if they can get it out before GTA 6, would be good. If they can't, would you delay it?
I would personally, but I also know that there are mitigating circumstances that CIG has. So I know that GTA 6 is console and Squadron is PC, and they're different. Yes,
but if you don't have to compete, why would you?
Well, here's another way to look at it. And again, I'll defer to Paul here. Paul, when do you think the hype train would start if it was coming in October? 6 months?
Minimum 6 months.
Yeah. So what?
Nine months is what I would choose at this point. So like Invictus would be a good. If they would need to start teasing it when we get into the new year, like January, February, we should start seeing some teaser trailers or some, maybe not announcement trailers, but like answer the call, hold the line.
We need to think of. I want to hear that in the comments. What is the third one? Because like I answered the call and I'm still holding the line. What's the next one? Fuck this! I'm hanging up. Like what is the
your call is very important to us.
Yeah.
Your call is very
very important.
Yeah.
What is the third punchline there that works for both the phone thing, but also for Star Citizen? Oh, Squadron. Sorry, this would be funny. But
they'll do. They need. If I was in charge, based off of what I know, and I'm not into digital marketing and just into games marketing, so don't like quote me verbatim. There are probably people who are much more professional than I am, and when it comes to that, because I didn't, that was not my industry.
Yeah.
But I would at least start doing some small teasers that you can put out as trailer, as like YouTube videos. Gather up some hype. Maybe do an underground marketing campaign.
Yep.
If you have the money and the ability to do like an ARG or something like that to get people who are really interested hyped up. And then you do an announcement at Invictus of the date, and then you do more bigger campaigns on the lead up to the release.
Do you think they'll bring in any of the cast to do adverts, as an example, like where we had Mark Hamill doing ads for Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi?
Yeah.
Do you think that they might bring him back in to do some stuff? Do you think,
if they have good relations with them, yes, of course they'll try to do that if they can.
And that's a high probability.
Yeah.
My understanding, they've got very good relations with Mark.
Yeah.
I remember the interview with Mark.
Are you on good terms with your neighbor, Paul?
Pretty good, yeah.
Yeah,
but
well, guess who lives next door to Chris Robertson Sandy in LA?
Well, down the road.
Yeah.
Oh, down the road.
Yeah. I know.
But I can remember when Sandy was interviewing Mark and John and
Bryce Davis,
after they'd been doing the filming, and Mark Hamill was saying, "Oh yeah, they asked me if I could do it," and I said, "Yep, I'm in." And his agent was like, "No, don't say that. I won't be able to get you any money," because it was just a refreshing thing for Mark to be able to get back and work with Chris. My understanding is the thing he really likes about Mark really likes about Chris is when Mark had been kind of typecast into Luke Skywalker.
Yeah,
Chris had him do the Wing Commander games and just treat him like a normal actor.
And that's definitely look how broad he's gone now with the Joker and all this other stuff. So so we probably thanks him a bit for that, give him a chance to change trajectory a little bit.
Yeah. So what I'll say is next year, look out for Squadron. We'll start to see Squadron stuff around January, February, if I'm right. And I would be very concerned if we don't hear anything by Invictus. That's the other thing I'll say.
Yeah,
be concerned if we don't hear anything about Invictus.
I think the other thing is we know that they've trialed YouTube ads in the past. So I think that might be a part of it because they've done those on and off around peak seasons, especially around AIE. We saw a lot of ads. Didn't see any this year, interestingly enough. I wonder if that's because they're trying to hold on to some cash so they could do more next year.
Yeah. I mean, from a marketing perspective, that is what you do so you can find out who you need to target because YouTube lets you target insane numbers of people. So you find out who's clicking what, and then you find out the demographic you want to hit, and then you use that. So go ahead.
The other thing that I think plays into the marketing for Squadron is the World Tour, which we know we've talked about. And we know they've been trying to do where they actually send key people to...
But they did that this year, Algrid.
To the citizens.
It wasn't really a full one like they wanted to do initially. Nope. I think the plans changed on that. But I do think, again, that world tour, things like the Idris coming out, where the Idris was meant to be coming out after Squadron, it's all signs of that was the original plan and something happened and changed, but they'd already put all these plans in place. So things...
And they just delayed
and changed.
The release, but the plans were still there. And so look, it's the same with the Gala they had planned. That got pulled last year. Everything we'd been given to believe, and everything we'd seen seemed to say that Squadron was going to be released last year, and it was basically a launch party. That seems to be what we heard. It got pulled very early, and that claim seemed to say CIG realised, we're not going to make that target.
Yeah.
But everything else, all the plans for release of Idris and release, it just seems to fit nicely into that planning. And as you said, they delayed it, but the plans was already set in stone, so they kept going. But yeah.
Gentlemen, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first event I can think of next year is actually in Australia at the Atmo Esports thing. And that'll be around February 20. Interesting timing that you mentioned February there, Paul. So maybe we might already know by then, or we learn more around then. I'm just curious now. I'm sitting here thinking about it. So yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, that would be that would be such a good place because you've got a high collection of fans. Fans will talk about it. The fan communities will post about it, which will again get all of the connected fan communities, the people who are not quite Star Citizen mains, but they talk about it frequently, who will then start talking about it, and then that will filter out to the rest of the gaming community. So, but we'll see. But I mean, I think to wrap this up, I think that's the main focus. Other than the stuff we already know that's going to be in Star Citizen, which is scanning, crafting, and maybe new inventory and possibly social tools for Star Citizen. The main focus is still going to be Squadron, and that's going to be their main hope.
I think you guys would both agree, even if it is not the most biggest year we've ever seen for Star Citizen, which if Squadron comes out, it obviously is going to be. I think it's going to be a very different year for Star Citizen, as in, like things that we haven't seen before, the marketing, the hype. Like, imagine where we're going to sit now in a year's time. Like, the entire community is probably going to have doubled in size. There's going to be so many more casual gamers that are in, people that came in just for Squadron and they'll almost leave as quickly as they came in. But then how many people are going to stay around to play Star Citizen? Like, there's a whole myriad of questions there to look forward to, and I'm very probably more excited for next year than I have any other year. Let's be honest.
How quiet will Squadron be? How quiet will the PU be when Squadron comes out?
A week of desert.
Well, I also think that be prepared for a brand new community to show up, because we really don't have a Squadron 42 community. There will be a community that only plays, that only hangs out because of Squadron, and they don't really care about Star Citizen. They already exist in the community. Once Squadron is out, they will fuck off, and a lot of other them will join them. So,
and for anyone that doesn't kind of know, when they released the trailer last year on IGN, there were people literally going, "Oh, I can't believe there's so many positive comments from Star Citizen." And then a regular person would go, "What do you mean? It's not Star Citizen, it's Squadron."
And then everyone below him were like,
"Yes, it is. It's actually the same. It's the single player version of Star Citizen." And this person's like learning on the fly from hundreds of people leaving comments. And it just really alliterated a lot of what I remember Paul saying a lot, is people just don't even know Squadron exists. And they're two separate things for most people. So I think you would also both agree with this. I'd be very surprised if there was not something at the end of Squadron that really, like a splash screen or something that says continue the game in Star Citizen, and it plays some kind of trailer and links you off to the website.
And the scary thing is, we know that part 2 and part 3 are still to come.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, So.
I think
that's where I'll leave my predictions.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered anything. Paul, I'll start with you then. What would you like to hear from people in the comments below?
I'd like to hear if people think, I want to hear their actual prediction dates for Squadron, and I also want to hear their own thoughts on if this year was successful or not.
I don't think I've got a ship to give away. Look, if I do one, I'll do it in the edit, but I might. There may or may not be a ship or something in the comments below, and if you get the date right, you'll win a ship. Might take you 6 months to figure out when the date was, but then you'll have to get back to me. We'll work something out. We might do it on the Discord. That actually would be the easier way to do it. I'll get Lemming to do it on the Discord. So
check on the Discord.
Giveaways on the Discord, because even if I don't do it for this video, I'll do it before it gets announced. So yeah.
Yeah.
Right, Agrid, what would you like to hear from people in the comments below?
How do you rate the success? Was this a successful year? What makes it a successful year to you?
I will add to that. Did these two gentlemen dress successfully, or did they not dress as comfortably as me? Because I think I did a way better job. But again, I just reiterate everything we've kind of talked about today. Was it a successful year? Are you looking forward to next year? You know, what did you like about this year? You know, obviously you can see where they fell. You can see where they stood up. And again, I think this year will be a really excellent reflection of next year, because they're starting to hit their stride. Like, let's be honest, this year was really the first kind of year they've put a lot of work into actual Star Citizen, like the content. We had not seen a drive like that before. And again, even though you might be stepping back, as long as the quality goes up, I think we'll be all a lot happier. And let's be honest, I think even when I talked about Grim and Trist about it at the start of this year, we wanted gameplay, but I think we're going to get that next year. I think it's not just going to be content next year. I think it's going to be gameplay and content, and that's double whammy. So I think it's going to make a lot of people really pleased. Let me know if that's what
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, let me know if that's what you're expecting as well. So yeah. All right. Where can people find you on the interwebs, please, Paul?
The Astropub, youtube.com/the Astropub, youtube.com/the Astropub Live, youtube.com/ at the Captain's Table Podcast, and youtube.com/ just youtube.com/ the Astro Historian, if I get that right.
Just a suggestion, Paul. You should just make a links page. So it's like link.com/astropub, and they go there and it just lists all your shit. And then
or you can just go look me up at the Astropub, the Captain's Table Podcast, and the Astro Historian, pretty much everywhere.
It works for Paul because he gets to talk about all of them, and it takes a long time. So it's the last thing people remember.
They don't know who these two bad-dressed gentlemen are by now. I don't think they're ever going to know who you are. So
you should be hitting that subscribe button here on Inforunners. So
that's right.
Yeah, go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe to see more of these wonderful faces of these gentlemen, and hit the bell icon to be notified when these release.
Paul comes along and joins us often, so you like his face.
And thank you to everyone that went the
20K
extra mile on Patreon at the end of the video. Actually, we are really close to 18K. Actually, I think we're only about 12 viewers off 18K subscribers. But yeah,
nice.
So, all right,
it'd be nice to finally break that barrier, wouldn't it?
Thank you for both joining me, gentlemen. It was great having you. It was a really great discussion. With that, then, he's been the Astropub. He's been Argrid.
He's been Execute.
Take care.
See you, citizens.